It's hard to figure out if Vinny Testaverde was any good or not. He played forever, and his fans include both Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells. If those two like you, you probably have to be doing something right. The numbers tell a different story, however. In 4 seasons, Testaverde led the league in interceptions. What's more, his career touchdown total of 275, it goes up against 267 picks, so it's almost a 1-for-1 ratio. That's not great, and nor are his 116 fumbles. Despite all of the negatives, Vinny Testaverde was fun to watch. There was really no middle ground when it came to his game. Either he was really good or he was really terrible, and sometimes you saw both in the same game, within even the same quarter. I mean, take that 2000 showdown, the Monday Night Miracle. I mean, it was a game where Testaverde was horrific in the first half and brilliant in the fourth quarter. The Jets ended up winning in a huge comeback. For all the memories of Testaverde, there are probably a few things you may not remember about him, so why don't we take a look at 5 of those? There is something odd about seeing Vinny Testaverde having more career touchdowns than Joe Montana. Now, obviously a big part of this is longevity. Testaverde played far more seasons than Montana and had many more starts than he did, but it still feels wrong in many ways. Although, Carson Palmer is somehow ahead of both of them, so who the hell knows what to think, honestly. In fairness, the only real reason Testaverde managed to surpass Joe Montana was because he ended up starting a bunch of games in his 40s when he was only scheduled to be a backup or he was called in as an emergency option. I mean, look no further than that 2004 season when Testaverde went to Dallas to back up Quincy Carter, only to be pressed into action for a full season of starting games because Carter was cut by the Cowboys after his cocaine suspension. If you like instant replay in the NFL, you can thank Vinny Testaverde. And if you hate it, you can blame Testaverde because he is kind of the catalyst to bring it back into the NFL in 1999. There's obviously the infamous play in the final game of the 1998 season where the Jets were playing the Seahawks and Testaverde scored a quote-unquote touchdown where the ball clearly and plainly did not cross the goal line. This sets off a huge chain reaction in the NFL, way beyond the bringing back of instant replay, but we're not going to get into all that. Anyway, basically, 98 was a mess for officiating, and this play by Testaverde just sort of was the last straw, and it forced owners to vote to bring back instant replay upon the conclusion of that 98 season, which meant 99, we got instant replay, and it has been with us in many different forms ever since. There is a tale of 2 stories from the 1987 NFL Draft. At first overall, for Miami, you had Vinny Testaverde, who was drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There was another quarterback out of Eastern Illinois who went undrafted that year, a guy by the name of Sean Payton. It's weird to think that these guys were in the same draft class because they have just had wildly divergent career paths. Obviously, Testaverde played forever. Sean Payton got into some replacement games with the Chicago Bears, but basically went directly in the coaching starting in '88 and worked his way up the coaching tree. Brings us back to 2004 with the Dallas Cowboys. Sean Payton was the assistant head coach under Bill Parcells and the offensive coordinator, and his quarterback was Vinny Testaverde, who would still play 2 more years. Like, Sean Payton was named head coach of the Saints in 2006. Testaverde still had 2 seasons left in him. Just an odd quirk about 2 guys who just sort of, 2 quarterbacks, same draft. One ends up spending his entire career in coaching, and the other manages to play forever and a day. Old quarterbacks seem to be everywhere these days, but it was much less common in the early 2000s. However, a random, meaningless Monday night game during that season provided us with a unique moment in history. The Jets faced the Patriots in Week 15. The game was meaningless. The Jets were really bad. The Patriots were good. Both teams sort of knew their fate at this point, and there wasn't much to this contest. The Patriots ran out to a 28-7 lead going into the fourth quarter. Jets coach Herm Edwards decided to pull starter Brooks Bollinger in order to give Testaverde some time because Bollinger was just awful in that game. And with the Patriots in the lead, Belichick decided that he would give Doug Flutie some reps, who was hanging around in the quarterback room at that time. So Testaverde actually threw a touchdown in this game. He completes a few different passes. Belichick lets Flutie complete one pass, and this would become the first game in NFL history where two quarterbacks over the age of 40 completed a pass in the same game. So I guess that's something. Vinny Testaverde is colorblind, and this was something he admitted early on in his career. Now, many fans sort of thought this impacted his play because those early Vinny Testaverde years were pretty brutal, especially in Tampa Bay. Of course, that also ignores the fact that those late 80s, early 90s Bucks teams were god-awful. And even when Testaverde went to the Browns and they became the Ravens, those were some pretty bad teams as well. So it didn't really seem to have anything to do with him not being able to see colors, but fans really went after him hard because of that. People also went after his intelligence quite a bit. It wasn't even just the fans and the media. Gene Upshaw, who was then president of the Players Association, you know, the group who protects all of the players' interests. Anyway, he said the following about Testaverde during a off-camera segment, or it was during an episode of TV. He thought his mic wasn't hot, his mic was on, and it picked him up saying this: Testaverde is so dumb that he would drag the electric cord through his swimming pool while trimming the hedges. Woof. That is brutal. Also, during this sort of rant about Testaverde, Upshaw claimed that he could play quarterback better than Testaverde, despite the fact he was an offensive lineman in the NFL. It seems pretty harsh on Testaverde. Testaverde was not the best quarterback to have ever played in the NFL, but dude was good, teammates seemed to love him, and I just don't understand why people hated him so much and thought he was so dumb. That does it for our look at Vinny Testaverde. I'm Cheyenne Hollis for the Touchback, and as always, make sure you hashtag take it out to the 25.